A poor mother takes her daughter to buy Christmas dinner with $20, but a young billionaire sees everything and does the unthinkable. The grocery store was packed. Grace held Chloe's hand tightly as she pushed the nearly empty cart down the aisles. With every step, people pushed carts overflowing with gifts, prime cuts of meat, expensive wines, and fancy desserts. It was Christmas Eve, and everyone seemed to have money to spare. Everyone, except her. Grace clutched the $20 bill in the pocket of her worn-out coat. It was all she had until her next paycheck, which would only come after the holidays. $20 to make a dinner that at least felt like Christmas. $20 to see her daughter smile. "Mommy, look!" Chloe pointed to a shelf full of Christmas tree-shaped chocolates with shiny wrappers and red bows. "They're beautiful, aren't they?" Grace smiled, steering the cart away before the little girl could insist. Chloe's bright eyes shone with the typical curiosity of a 5-year-old. Her blonde hair fell in soft waves over her shoulders, framing a little face that still believed in magic. Grace desperately wanted to preserve that innocence, at least for one more Christmas. She stopped in the pasta aisle. Pasta was on sale. She grabbed 2 packages, $4. She still had 16. She could make homemade tomato sauce. Tomatoes were cheap, as were onions and garlic. Another $3. That left 13 for something special. They passed the meat section. Grace glanced at the frozen turkeys. The smallest one cost $18. Impossible. Chicken was more affordable, but even that would use up almost all the money she had left. Chloe let go of her mother's hand and ran to the turkey freezer. She pressed her little face against the glass, looking at the huge golden birds in their packaging. "Mommy, this one is perfect." She pointed to a medium-sized turkey. Grace walked over and checked the price. $22. She didn't even have that much. "Mommy?" Grace looked at her daughter. "Aren't you going to buy the turkey?" The question was filled with innocence, but it landed like a stone in Grace's chest. She took a deep breath, trying to find the strength to tell the truth. "We don't have enough money, sweetie." The silence that followed was painful. Chloe looked down at her own worn-out shoes. She didn't cry. She never cried when Grace said they couldn't afford something. That broke her mother's heart even more. Grace knelt beside the little girl and ran a hand through her blonde hair. "We're going to have a nice dinner anyway, okay? I'll make that mac and cheese you like." "Okay, Mommy." Her voice was quiet, resigned. Grace stood up, holding her daughter's hand firmly again. They needed to finish their shopping quickly and go home. The longer they stayed there, the harder it would be to resist the temptation to spend what they didn't have. That's when she realized they weren't alone. A man was standing a few feet away, looking at them. He was young, maybe in his 30s, dressed simply but elegantly. Dark jeans, a grey sweater, and a black leather jacket. There was something in his eyes that Grace couldn't quite figure out. It wasn't pity, it was something else. She pulled Chloe closer and pushed the cart forward, trying to ignore his presence. She was used to the stares. Sometimes they were judgmental, a young single mother, clearly struggling. Other times they were curious, but this look was different. "Excuse me." Grace froze. The man had approached them. She turned slowly, instinctively placing herself between him and Chloe. "Yes." The man smiled, but there was a hint of nervousness in his smile. He seemed as uncomfortable as she was. "Sorry to bother you." He ran a hand through his dark hair. "I didn't mean to. Well, I overheard you. About the turkey." Grace felt her face flush. Embarrassment mixed with shame. "We're fine, thank you." She started to walk away. "Wait, please." He took a step forward but kept a respectful distance. "I didn't mean to offend, it's just, I'm also doing some last-minute shopping." Grace looked at his cart. It was empty, except for a bottle of wine and a bag of coffee. "Look, I know this is going to sound strange." The man took a deep breath. "But I have a turkey at home. A huge one, actually. I bought it yesterday, thinking my sister and nephews were coming over, but they cancelled at the last minute." Grace narrowed her eyes. What was he getting at? "And I'm going to be spending Christmas alone." He shrugged as if it were no big deal, but Grace saw a fleeting sadness in his eyes. "It doesn't make sense to have a whole turkey just for myself." Chloe peeked out to get a better look at the stranger. "You're going to be alone on Christmas." The little girl had that directness only children can have. The man smiled at her, and this time the smile was genuine. "I am. My name is Ryan, by the way. I'm Chloe, and this is my mommy, Grace." Grace lightly touched her daughter's shoulder, a silent signal for her to be quiet. It wasn't good to talk to strangers, even if they seemed harmless. "Look, Ryan, that's kind of you, but we don't need—" She searched for the right words. "We'll be fine." "I know you will." Ryan put his hands in his pockets. "It's not about needing, it's about sharing." There was a moment of silence. Around them, people continued to pass, pushing carts, talking, living their lives. But in that small grocery store aisle, it felt like time had stopped. "Mommy," Chloe tugged on Grace's coat sleeve. "Shh, sweetie." Ryan looked at the floor for a moment, as if gathering courage. "When I was a kid, my family didn't have much." He looked up. "I remember one Christmas when my mom only had a few dollars. We had sandwiches that night. She tried to turn it into an adventure, as you know, said we were having a Christmas picnic." Grace felt something stir in her chest. She knew that feeling. She knew the weight of trying to make a little seem like enough. Years later, when things got better, my mom always made a point of inviting someone over for Christmas. Ryan smiled faintly. "She said no one should spend the holiday alone or with too little." "Your mum sounds like a special person," Grace said softly. "She was." His voice grew softer. "She passed away a few months ago." "I'm so sorry." "Thank you." Ryan took a deep breath. "So, yeah, that's why I'm here making this crazy offer. Christmas is a time for sharing, right? And I really didn't want to spend tonight alone." He looked at Grace, then at Chloe, and smiled. "What do you say you two join me?" Grace was paralyzed. This couldn't be happening. She didn't know this man. She knew nothing about him, other than the fact that he seemed to have a sad story and a turkey too big to eat alone. "I don't think," she began. "Mommy, can I?" "Please?" Chloe looked up at her with those hope-filled eyes. "He seems nice, and we can have turkey." "Chloe, it doesn't work like that." Grace tried to sound firm, but her voice came out tired. "We don't know him." "I understand." Ryan held up his hands. "Completely. And I know it sounds crazy to accept an invitation from a stranger. But—" He took his wallet out of his pocket and pulled out a card. "This is my business card. My full name, company, phone number. You can look me up if you want, or you can call someone and let them know where you'll be. I just don't want you to miss out on a real Christmas because of justified suspicion." Grace took the card. Ryan Foster, CEO of Foster Enterprises. The address was printed just below. "You're a businessman." "I am," he smiled sheepishly. "I inherited the company from my dad a few years ago. It's not as glamorous as it sounds. I still have to do last-minute shopping at a crowded grocery store like everyone else." Despite everything, Grace couldn't hold back a small smile. She looked at Chloe. The girl was clinging to her hand, looking between her and Ryan with anticipation. Grace knew that look. It was the same look Chloe had when she saw other kids playing in the park with their parents, or when she passed by toy stores. It was the look of a child who wanted something simple, to belong, to be happy, to have a complete Christmas. And Grace, she wanted to trust. She wanted to believe there were still good people in the world, people who did kind things without ulterior motives. But life had taught her to be cautious. Life had taught her that trust was dangerous. But then, looking at Ryan, she saw something that made her hesitate. She saw loneliness. She saw the same adrift feeling she felt every day. She saw someone who, just like her, was trying to find a piece of warmth in that cold time of year. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, directly. Ryan didn't look away. "Because I know what it's like to be alone. And because my mom would be disappointed if I passed up the chance to do what she always did." He shrugged. "And honestly, because you two seem to need a good Christmas as much as I do." It wasn't pity in his voice. It was empathy. And that made all the difference. Grace looked at her nearly empty cart, at the $20 in her pocket, at her daughter by her side. She thought about the night that awaited them. Simple pasta, no dessert, no magic. She thought about another Christmas where she would try to convince Chloe they were fine, when they both knew they weren't. Okay. The word came out before she could regret it. Really? Ryan seemed genuinely surprised, but on one condition. Grace held up a finger. We're bringing dessert, and I'm helping in the kitchen. We're not just going to show up and eat your food without contributing, Ryan laughed. And it was a beautiful, free laugh. Deal, but only if you let me make the salad, because I'm terrible at cooking meat, but I make a decent salad. Grace felt something strange in her chest, something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. So, I'll see you in a bit, Ryan asked. At 6, Grace suggested. Perfect. The address is on the card. He started to walk away, then stopped and looked back. And Grace, thank you for accepting. I really didn't want to be alone tonight. She just nodded, not knowing what to say. As Ryan disappeared between the shelves, Chloe squeezed her mother's hand. We're going to have a real Christmas, Mommy. Grace looked at her daughter and smiled, even though her heart was still pounding from the impulsive decision she had just made. I think so, sweetie. I think so. And for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to believe it. Grace parked the old car in front of the gate and looked at the address on the card for the third time. Was this really the place? The house, no, the mansion, stood imposing behind a discreet wall. Golden lights shone in the windows, and she could see a huge Christmas tree through the living room glass. Wow, Chloe had her face pressed against the car window. Is it a castle, Mommy? No, sweetie. It's just a big house. But Grace's stomach was in knots. What was she doing here? She had spent the last hour getting ready, changing outfits 3 times, trying to look presentable with the little she had. Chloe wore her best dress, the blue one that matched her eyes. Grace had braided the girl's blonde hair, which now shone under the streetlights. She rang the doorbell, and the sound echoed on the other side. Seconds later, Ryan opened the door. You made it, he smiled widely, and Grace noticed he had changed his clothes. He now wore a simple white shirt with the sleeves rolled up and jeans, nothing too formal. Come in, come in. It's cold out there. Chloe ran inside but stopped in the middle of the foyer, her mouth open. Grace understood why. The Christmas tree was gigantic, touching the high ceiling of the room. White lights twinkled among the branches decorated with gold and silver ornaments. Underneath, there were only 2 wrapped gifts. The fireplace was lit, filling the room with a cozy warmth. The dining table was set with a pristine white tablecloth, elegant plates, and crystal glasses. Grace felt a tightness in her chest. This was another world, a world so far from her own that it felt unreal. It's the prettiest tree I've ever seen. Chloe ran to it, her eyes sparkling. You can get closer. Ryan approached. My mom always decorated it herself. This year, well, I hired someone. It didn't turn out as beautiful as she used to do it, but I tried to keep the tradition. It's perfect, Grace murmured. Ryan looked at her and smiled. Did you bring dessert? Grace held up the bag she was carrying. Brownies, nothing too fancy, but brownies are perfect. You can leave them here in the kitchen. He took the bag. I'll finish getting everything ready. Make yourselves at home. Grace watched Ryan disappear into the kitchen and felt completely lost. She didn't know where to sit, where to stand, what to do. This house was too big, too beautiful, too rich. She didn't belong here. Chloe, on the other hand, was exploring everything with a child's fascination. Mommy, look at this ornament. It's an angel. It's beautiful, sweetie, but don't touch it, okay? Okay. Grace sat on the edge of the sofa, her hands in her lap, trying to look natural. But nothing there felt natural to her. Through the window, she could see the pool covered for the winter and a well-manicured garden. How much did a house like this cost? How much did it cost just to keep it all running? Grace? Ryan appeared at the kitchen door. Can you come here for a second? She stood up and went to him. The kitchen was huge, with marble countertops and shiny appliances. The turkey was already in the oven, smelling wonderful. You said you wanted to help. Ryan pointed to the ingredients on the counter. I thought we could make the salad together. That way it's less formal. Grace relaxed a little. Cooking was something she understood. Of course. They worked side by side, chopping vegetables and making the dressing. Ryan was clumsy with the knife, and Grace couldn't help but smile when he almost cut his finger for the third time. "You don't cook much, do you?" "Is it that obvious?" he laughed. "I usually order takeout." "Every day?" "Almost," he shrugged. "It doesn't make sense to cook just for myself." Grace thought about how she cooked every day for herself and Chloe, even when she was exhausted. It was one of the few things she could offer her daughter, a homemade meal, made with love. Half an hour later, they were sitting at the table. Chloe was swinging her little legs in her chair, excited. The turkey was in the center, golden and perfect. Around it were the salad, mashed potatoes, roasted vegetables, and Grace's brownies for dessert. "Can I?" Chloe looked at the turkey with anticipation. "Of course." Ryan started to serve. "How much do you want?" "A lot." He placed a generous portion on the girl's plate, then served Grace, and finally, himself. There was something comforting in that simple act of sharing food. For the first few minutes, they ate in silence. Grace was tense, eating slowly, trying to use the right silverware. Chloe, without any ceremony, devoured everything with enthusiasm. "This is delicious," the girl said with her mouth full. "Chloe, don't talk with your mouth full," Grace corrected gently. Ryan laughed. "It's okay. It's nice to see someone really enjoying the food." He took a sip of wine and looked at the table, at the two blondes sitting there, and something in his face changed. It became softer, sadder. "You know, my mum always said Christmas was the most important day of the year," he began, his voice low, not because of the presents or the food, but because it was when people got together. Grace stopped eating, paying attention. She spent her whole life making this day special. She'd decorate the house weeks in advance, cook for days, invite everyone she knew. Ryan smiled, but it was a sad smile. She used to say that no one should spend Christmas alone. "She sounds like she was an amazing person," Grace said. She was. He looked down at his plate. She died in August. Cancer. It was too fast. The silence hung heavy at the table. Chloe had stopped eating and was looking at Ryan with that innocent empathy that children have. "My dad died too," the little girl said softly. "I mean, he left before I was born. But it's almost the same thing." "Chloe," Grace started, but Ryan interrupted. "No, it's okay." He looked at the girl. "I'm sorry about that, Chloe. It must be hard." "Sometimes," she shrugged. "But Mommy takes good care of me." Grace felt her eyes burn. She tried. God knew how much she tried. Ryan looked at Grace, and there was something in his eyes she didn't expect. Respect. "I'm sure she does." "It's not easy." Grace heard her own voice come out before she could think. "I work as a waitress in a small diner. The shifts are long, the pay is low, and some days I can barely pay the bills." She didn't know why she was telling him this. Maybe it was the wine, or maybe it was the way Ryan had opened his own heart first. "But you're raising a wonderful child." Ryan pointed at Chloe with his fork. "That's worth more than anything." "I try." Grace took a deep breath. "I just wish I could give her more, more than thrift store clothes and simple dinners." "Mommy, I like our clothes," Chloe said, "and our food too." Grace smiled, even as tears threatened to fall. "I know, sweetie." Ryan stood up and went to the kitchen, returning with a bottle of juice for Chloe. "How about a toast?" He filled the girl's glass and the adults' wine glasses. "To Christmas, and to not being alone." They raised their glasses and clinked them together. The sound of crystal echoed through the room. After that, the mood changed. The tension Grace felt began to dissipate. Ryan told funny stories about his disastrous attempts at cooking, and Chloe laughed so hard she almost spilled her juice. "One time I tried to bake a cake," Ryan made a face. "I mixed up the salt and the sugar." "No." Chloe's eyes widened. "Yes, my sister almost killed me." "Your sister didn't come for Christmas?" Grace asked. "No. She lives in another state now. Has her own kids, her own life." Ryan smiled without resentment. And that's okay. That's life. Chloe started talking about school, about the teacher she adored, about how she wanted to learn to read better. Ryan listened with genuine attention, asking questions, laughing at the right moments. Grace watched it all with a strange feeling in her chest. For the first time in years, she didn't feel the constant weight of being alone. There at that table, with this kind stranger and her happy daughter, she felt like part of something, part of a family, even if it was just for one night, even if it was just an illusion. But it was a good illusion, and she decided to let herself believe in it, at least until Christmas was over. "Who wants brownies?" Ryan asked when the plates were empty. "Me!" Chloe raised her hand. Grace cut the brownies and served them. When Ryan took the first bite, his eyes widened. "This is incredible. It's my grandmother's recipe." Grace felt her face flush at the compliment. "Nothing too special." "It is special." He took another piece. "Seriously, you should sell these." They laughed, talked more, and the hours passed without anyone noticing. When Chloe started to yawn, Grace looked at the clock and was startled. "Wow, it's past 10. We need to go." "Already?" Chloe protested. "Your mom is right." Ryan stood up. "But you can come back whenever you want." Grace looked at him and saw sincerity in those words. "Thank you, Ryan, for everything. It was the best Christmas we've had in a long time. For me, too." He smiled. "Seriously, thank you for coming." At the door, Chloe hugged Ryan tightly. "Merry Christmas." "Merry Christmas, Chloe." Grace and Ryan looked at each other for a moment, and something passed between them, something new, fragile, but real. "See you soon," he said. "See you soon," she replied. And as she drove back home, with Chloe asleep in the back seat, Grace smiled. For the first time in a long time, the future seemed a little less lonely. Grace was in the middle of her afternoon shift when the bell on the door rang. She didn't even look up, busy cleaning a table full of crumbs and dirty glasses. The diner wasn't big, just 10 tables scattered in a cramped space, with a worn-out Formica counter and chairs that had seen better days. "Sit anywhere you like, I'll be right with you," she called over her shoulder. "No rush." Grace froze. She knew that voice. She turned slowly and saw Ryan standing near the entrance, his hands in his coat pockets, a slightly sheepish smile on his face. He looked out of place there, with his expensive clothes in a place where most customers wore work uniforms and worn-out sneakers. "Ryan," she dropped the cloth on the table. "What are you doing here?" "Came for lunch," he shrugged. "Or is it too late for that?" Grace looked at the clock on the wall. 2:30 in the afternoon. The lunch rush was over, and only 2 customers were left in the corner, drinking coffee. "No, it's not too late." She grabbed the order pad from her apron. "Sit over there." Ryan chose a table near the window and settled in. Grace approached, still processing the surprise of seeing him there. "How did you find out where I work?" "You mentioned it at Christmas. Miller's Diner, next to the pharmacy." He opened the laminated menu. It wasn't hard to find. Grace felt her face flush. Had she talked about work? She didn't remember. "What can I get you?" "What do you recommend?" "The burger is good, and the apple pie too." "Then I'll have that. A classic burger and a slice of apple pie." He closed the menu. "And a coffee." Grace wrote it down and went to the kitchen to place the order. Tom, the cook, raised an eyebrow. "Who's the guy in the nice coat?" "A friend." The word sounded strange. Were they friends? They had spent one evening together at Christmas, and since then Grace hadn't heard from him. She thought it had just been a moment, a one-time kindness that wouldn't be repeated. When the order was ready, she brought it to the table. Ryan thanked her and started to eat, but Grace noticed he seemed nervous. "Is everything okay with the food?" "It's great." He took a sip of coffee. "Look, Grace, I came here because I wanted to see you, and because, well, I brought something." He picked up a bag that was on the floor next to his chair. It was a bag from an expensive store, wrapped in gift paper. "For Chloe." He pushed the bag across the table. Grace looked at the gift and felt her stomach churn. "Ryan, I know." He held up his hands. "But let me explain. At Christmas, Chloe mentioned she wanted a doll, a specific doll, with long hair and a blue dress. She talked about it like 3 times during dinner. Grace remembered. Chloe had seen the doll in a store window weeks ago and wouldn't stop talking about it. It was too expensive, something Grace could never afford. "Ryan, I can't accept this." "Why not?" Because I can't." She crossed her arms. "You've already been too kind, Christmas dinner, everything. I can't keep accepting things from you." Ryan sighed and leaned forward. "Grace, it's just a gift. A doll. Every child deserves a gift for Christmas. But Christmas is over. So, it's a late gift." He smiled. "Look, I'm not trying to, I don't know, buy you or something. I just saw the doll in the store and thought of Chloe. I thought about how her eyes would light up, and I wanted to do it." Grace looked at the bag, torn. Part of her wanted to refuse, to keep her pride intact, but another part, the part that was a mother, thought of Chloe. She thought about how happy the little girl would be. "She's going to love it," Grace murmured, "but I don't feel comfortable with this." "I understand." Ryan went back to his burger, "but I already bought it. And there's no way to return it, so at least let me give it to her. If you don't want me to give any more gifts, that's fine. But this one is already here." Grace sighed, defeated. "Okay, but this is the last one." "Deal," Ryan agreed, but there was a twinkle in his eye that said he wasn't sure he would keep that promise. Grace took the bag and hid it behind the counter. She went back to cleaning other tables, but she could feel Ryan's eyes following her. It was strange to have someone there, someone who had come specifically to see her. When he finished eating, he paid the bill and left a generous tip. "Thanks for coming," Grace said, putting the money away. "Can I come back?" She blinked, surprised. "Come back?" "Yeah, to eat here. The food is good, and, well, it's close to my office." He put his hands in his pockets. "If it's not weird for you." Grace didn't know what to say. Was it weird? She wasn't sure. "No, it's not weird. You can come whenever you want." "Great," Ryan smiled. "Then I'll see you soon." And he left, leaving Grace standing there behind the counter trying to understand what was happening. Ryan came back 2 days later, and then 2 days after that, and suddenly he became a regular presence, always at the same time, always ordering different things from the menu. Sometimes he'd stay for half an hour, other times a full hour, working on his laptop while he drank coffee. Grace tried not to make a big deal of it, but it was impossible to ignore him. Impossible not to notice how he smiled when she approached his table, or how he always asked about Chloe. "Did she like the doll?" he asked on a rainy Thursday. "She hasn't stopped playing with it since she got it," Grace admitted, refilling his cup. "She sleeps with it." "I'm glad." Tom noticed the frequent visits and started making jokes. "Your boyfriend is here again." "He's not my boyfriend," Grace retorted, serving orders. "Then what is he?" "Because he's not coming here for the food. I can guarantee you that." Grace didn't have an answer for that. On Friday, Ryan showed up with a coloring book and colored pencils. "For Chloe," he said, a bit embarrassed. "I saw it in a store and thought of her." "Ryan," Grace started. I know, you said no more gifts, but it's just a coloring book." "It doesn't count, right?" Grace took the book, looking at the cover with princesses and castles. "You don't have to do this." "I know I don't have to. I want to." He took a sip of coffee. "Look, I don't have family nearby. My sister lives far away. My parents are gone. It's just me. And after Christmas, and after that night with you two, I realized how much I missed that. Having someone to give a gift to, someone to care about." Grace sat in the chair across from him, something she normally wouldn't do during her shift. "But we barely know each other." "So let's get to know each other better." Ryan shrugged. "It doesn't have to be complicated. I come here, we talk, I bring little gifts for Chloe every now and then. No pressure, no expectations." "Why?" Grace asked directly. "Why are you doing this?" Ryan was quiet for a moment, stirring his cup. "Because you two remind me that there's still goodness in the world." Because that Christmas night, for the first time in months, I didn't feel alone. He looked up. And because I like you. It's as simple as that. Grace felt a tightness in her chest. It had been so long since someone said they liked her. So long since someone cared. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, just let me keep coming here. He smiled. The coffee is good. Grace laughed. In spite of everything. The coffee is terrible and you know it. Okay, it's awful, Ryan agreed, laughing too. But the company makes up for it. Tom yelled from the kitchen that an order was ready, and Grace stood up. I have to work. I know. Go on. But before she walked away, she lightly touched his shoulder. Thank you. For the book. And for everything. Ryan just nodded, but the smile on his face said more than words. As Grace went back to work, she realized something was changing. The walls she had built around herself and Chloe were starting to crack. And for the first time, she wasn't sure if she wanted to fix them. Maybe, just maybe, it was time to let someone in. And Ryan seemed to be exactly the right person for that. Grace wiped down the counter for the third time, checked the sauce on the stove, and straightened the chairs around the small table. The apartment was tidy, or as tidy as a two-room place could be. She had spent the whole afternoon preparing, cleaning every corner, trying to make the tiny space look presentable. Ryan was coming for dinner, at her place. The idea had come up naturally, almost without thinking. He was at the diner, as usual, and Grace had said, "You're always eating here. How about coming over for dinner one day? Real food." Ryan had accepted immediately, his eyes lighting up at the idea. And now here she was, nervous as a teenager before a first date. "Mommy, is he coming soon?" Chloe asked for the 10th time, sitting on the couch with the doll Ryan had given her. "In a little while, sweetie." Grace looked at the clock. 7 o'clock sharp. Ryan had said he'd be there at 7:30. She still had time. She went back to the kitchen and checked the pasta. It was her grandmother's recipe, passed down to her mother and then to her. Fresh handmade pasta, tomato sauce with basil, garlic, and a secret touch that made all the difference. It was nothing fancy, nothing that would impress a chef, but it was made with love. It was the kind of food that warmed you from the inside. The doorbell rang at exactly 7:30. Chloe jumped off the couch and ran to the door. "It's him! It's him!" "Calm down, Chloe." Grace dried her hands on her apron and opened the door. Ryan was there, holding a bottle of wine and a bouquet of simple flowers. He was wearing jeans and a blue shirt. Nothing too formal. He seemed to have tried to look casual, and Grace appreciated the effort. "Hi," he smiled, a little sheepishly. "I hope this isn't too much. The flowers are for you and, well, I thought wine would go well with dinner." Grace took the flowers, feeling her face flush. "Thank you. They're beautiful." "Hi, Ryan." Chloe jumped in front of him. "Want to see my room?" "Chloe, let him come in first." Grace laughed, motioning for Ryan to enter. He came in and looked around. The apartment was small but clean and organized. The living room and kitchen were practically the same space, separated only by a counter. There was an old but comfortable couch, a small TV, and a bookshelf with children's books and a few decorations. The walls had Chloe's drawings taped up. "It's cozy," Ryan said, and it didn't sound forced. It sounded sincere. "It's small." Grace put the flowers in a glass of water since she didn't have a vase. "But it's ours." "Come see my room." Chloe pulled Ryan's hand. Grace laughed. "Go on, before she drags you." Ryan let Chloe lead him to the small room at the end of the hall. It was tiny, with a twin bed against the wall, a small dresser and shelves full of simple toys. The doll Ryan had given her had a place of honor on the bed. "This is Bella." Chloe picked up the doll. "She's my favorite." "I'm glad you like her." "I love her." Chloe hugged the doll. "And look, I made this drawing for you." She took a piece of paper from the dresser. It was a colorful drawing with 3 figures, a blonde woman, a blonde girl, and a man with dark hair, all holding hands. Above, written in crooked letters, "My family." Ryan felt a lump in his throat. "It's beautiful, Chloe. Thank you so much. You can take it to your house." "I'll treasure it." Grace appeared at the door, wiping her hands on her apron. "Close, yes, don't bother, Ryan. Come on, dinner is ready." They sat at the small table. Grace had put out a clean tablecloth, simple but nicely arranged plates, and folded paper napkins. In the center was a steaming dish of pasta, the red sauce shining under the kitchen's yellow light. "This smells incredibly good," Ryan said. "It's my grandmother's recipe." Grace started to serve. "Nothing too special, but I'm sure it will be great." Grace placed a generous portion on Ryan's plate, then served Chloe, and finally herself. There was also a simple salad and homemade bread she had baked that morning. Ryan picked up his fork, twirled some pasta, and brought it to his mouth. As soon as he tasted it, his eyes widened. He chewed slowly, savoring it, and then looked at Grace with an expression of pure surprise. "Grace, your food is wonderful," he said, and there was something in his voice, a deep sincerity. "I've never tasted anything so special." Grace felt her face catch fire. She wasn't used to compliments, especially not like that with such intensity. "It's just pasta," she murmured, stirring her own food. "It's not just pasta." Ryan took another forkful. "It tastes like... I don't know how to explain it. It tastes like home, like love." "I always say Mommy cooks better than anyone," Chloe said excitedly, her mouth full of sauce. "Better than the diner, better than school, better than everything," Grace laughed, wiping the corner of her daughter's mouth with a napkin. "Thank you, sweetie." "It's true," Chloe insisted. "One day Mommy will have a huge restaurant and everyone will want to eat her food." Ryan looked at Grace. "Have you ever thought about that?" "Having a restaurant?" Grace shrugged, uncomfortable with the attention. "It's just a silly dream. It's not realistic." "Why not?" "Because..." She searched for the right words. "Because restaurants need money. A lot of money. They need time, business knowledge, 1,000 things I don't have." "But you have talent," Ryan insisted, "and talent is the hardest part. The rest can be learned." Grace smiled, but it was a sad smile. "Maybe in a perfect world, but in the real world, I have to pay rent, bills, buy food. I don't have the luxury of dreaming too big." Ryan fell quiet, but Grace saw something flash in his eyes. Determination, perhaps. They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Chloe chattered about school, about how she had learned to write her full name, about the new teacher who was nice. Ryan listened attentively, asking questions, laughing at the right moments. Grace watched it all with a strange feeling in her chest. It felt so normal, so right. As if Ryan had always been there, sitting at that table, being a part of their lives. When they finished, Grace served dessert, homemade pudding. Ryan had 2 helpings and praised it so much that Grace had to ask him to stop, embarrassed. After dinner, Chloe started to yawn. "Time for bed, little lady," Grace said. "But I want to stay with Ryan," Chloe protested. "I'll still be here when you wake up tomorrow," Ryan promised. "I'll have breakfast with you guys, how about that?" Chloe's eyes lit up. "Really? Really?" "Okay then." Grace took her daughter to her room, helped her change, and tucked her into bed. Chloe hugged her doll and closed her eyes, exhausted after a full day of excitement. "Mommy," she murmured, half asleep. "Yes, sweetie." "I like Ryan," Grace smiled, stroking her daughter's blonde hair. "I do too, honey." "He could stay forever, right?" Grace felt her heart ache. "We'll see. Now sleep." When she returned to the living room, Ryan was washing the dishes. "Hey, you don't have to do that," she protested. "I know, but I want to help." He continued scrubbing a plate. "You cooked this amazing meal. It's the least I can do." Grace grabbed a dish towel and started drying. They worked side by side, in silence. And there was something intimate about that moment, something that went beyond words. When they finished, they sat on the couch. Grace served coffee, better coffee than at the diner, and they sat there just enjoying the quiet of the apartment. "Grace," Ryan broke the silence, his voice low, "can I ask you a question?" "Of course." He hesitated, as if choosing his words carefully. "About Chloe's father," he began. You don't have to answer if you don't want to, but what happened?" Grace took a deep breath. She knew this question would come eventually. People were always curious. He left, she said simply, when he found out I was pregnant. Ryan said nothing, just waited. We had been dating for a year. I was 22, he was 25. I thought it was serious, you know. Grace looked at the cup in her hands. When I told him about the pregnancy, he panicked, said he wasn't ready, that he didn't want to be a father, that it was too soon. Grace, he gave me money. She continued, her voice firmer now, to solve the problem, man, as he called it. But I didn't want to. I couldn't. And when he realized I was going to have the baby, he just disappeared, changed his number, blocked me on social media, vanished. Ryan clenched his fists, his jaw tight. What kind of man does that? A coward, Grace shrugged. But you know what? I don't regret it. Not for a second, because I have Chloe, and she's worth everything. Every struggle, every bill I can barely pay, every night I go to bed worried. She's worth all of it. There was pride in her voice now, a strength Ryan hadn't heard before. I raised her alone since the day she was born. I worked through the pregnancy, went back to work 2 weeks after she was born because I had no choice. Grace looked at Ryan. And yes, it was hard. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, but I did it. We did it. Ryan was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. You're incredible, Grace. Seriously. I look at you, and I see a strength that most people don't even know exists. Grace felt her eyes burn. I just did what had to be done. No. Ryan leaned forward, taking her hand. For you did more than that. You raised a happy, kind, loving child alone. That's no small thing. Grace looked at his hand on hers. It was warm, firm. There were days I didn't know if I was going to make it, she admitted, her voice low. Days I cried in the bathroom, afraid Chloe would hear me. Days I wondered if I was doing everything wrong. But you kept going. Ryan squeezed her hand. You didn't give up. Giving up was never an option. She needs me. And now, Ryan asked softly, who takes care of you? Grace blinked, surprised by the question. I take care of myself. It doesn't have to be like that anymore, Ryan said, and there was something intense in his gaze. You don't have to face everything alone, Grace. Not anymore. Ryan, I'm here, he interrupted. And I want to be here, not out of pity, not because I feel obligated, but because you two have become important to me. More important than I could ever explain. Grace felt a tear roll down her cheek. She couldn't remember the last time someone had said something like that to her, that someone had truly cared. I'm scared, she whispered. Scared to trust, to let someone in and then have them leave too. Ryan raised his free hand and gently wiped the tear from her face. I'm not leaving, he said with conviction. I promise, I'm not like him, Grace. I'm not the kind of person who runs when things get tough. How can you be so sure? Because I know what it's like to be alone. I know how much it hurts. Ryan held her face gently. And I would never do that to you. I would never do that to Chloe. Grace closed her eyes, letting more tears fall, and for the first time in years, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she didn't have to carry everything alone, that maybe someone was there, willing to share the weight. Ryan pulled her into a hug, and Grace let herself relax against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. Thank you, she murmured, for being here, for caring. Always, Ryan replied, kissing the top of her head. I'll always be here. And in that moment, in that small and simple apartment, something changed between them. Something that would go beyond friendship, beyond kindness. Something that felt a lot like a new beginning. The phone rang on a Saturday morning. Grace was making breakfast when she saw Ryan's name on the screen. Hello? Good morning. His voice sounded cheerful. Sorry to call early, but do you have plans for today? Grace looked out the window. The sun was shining in a clear blue sky, a rarity for that time of year. No specific plans. Why? I was thinking of an outing, the three of us. There's a park nearby with an ice skating rink, a lake, that sort of thing. He sounded a little hesitant. What do you think? Grace smiled. I think Chloe would love that. Great. Can I pick you up in an hour? Perfect. When Grace told Chloe about the outing, she jumped off the couch, shouting with joy, "We're going out with Ryan!" Grace helped her daughter get ready. They chose warm clothes, thick coats, hats, gloves. Winter was in full swing, and the cold outside was biting. Grace took Chloe's pink hat, the one with the pom-pom that the girl adored, and adjusted it on her blonde hair. Ready for an adventure? So ready. Ryan arrived on time, driving a sleek black car. He opened the door for them, always a gentleman. "Ready for an adventure?" he asked, adjusting Chloe's seatbelt in the back. "So ready," Chloe replied excitedly, swinging her little legs. The park was 20 minutes away. During the drive, Chloe didn't stop talking, telling them about her week at school, a drawing she had made, and how she had helped her mom make cookies. Ryan listened to everything with attention, asking questions and laughing at the girls' stories. Grace watched their interaction, the way Ryan genuinely cared about what Chloe was saying, how he never pretended to be interested, never ignored the little girl. He truly cared. The park was huge, with snow-covered trees, winding paths, and in the center, a frozen lake turned into an ice skating rink. Entire families were scattered around the place. Children running, couples walking hand in hand, groups laughing around makeshift bonfires. "Wow." Chloe pressed her face against the car window. "Look at all the people." "It's beautiful, isn't it?" Ryan smiled, looking for a parking spot. Ryan parked and they got out. The cold air hit their faces, but it was pleasant, the kind that made your cheeks red. Grace pulled her hat down further, covering her ears. "It's cold." Chloe did a little jump. "It is." Ryan knelt in front of her. "But we'll be walking a lot. That will warm us up." They walked along the snow-covered paths. Chloe ran ahead, stopping to look at every detail. A squirrel climbing a tree, a bird perched on a branch, footprints in the snow. She would bend down to touch the snow, making little snowballs with her gloved hands. "She has so much energy," Ryan commented, walking beside Grace. "She's always been like that." Grace smiled, watching her daughter. "Since she was a baby. Sometimes I get exhausted just keeping up. It must be tiring." "It is, but I wouldn't change a thing." Grace looked at Ryan. Her energy, her joy, it's what keeps me going. On the tough days, I look at her and remember why I fight so hard. Ryan briefly squeezed Grace's hand. "She's lucky to have you. I'm the lucky one to have her." They reached the skating rink. It was a large area, with music playing and colorful lights in the trees. Dozens of people were skating, some skilled, gliding with ease, others wobbly, holding onto the sides. Chloe stopped at the edge of the rink, her eyes wide. Her hands gripped the railing, completely mesmerized by the scene. "Mommy, look." Grace walked over and saw her daughter watching the children who were skating, laughing and spinning on the ice. There was a group of girls Chloe's age, all holding hands, gliding together. "It's pretty, isn't it?" "So pretty," Chloe sighed. "I wish I could skate." The tone was so full of longing that Grace felt her heart ache. She knew her daughter always wanted to try things other kids did, but they often didn't have the money or opportunity. "I don't know how to skate, sweetie," Grace admitted, feeling useless. "I never learned." "Me neither," Chloe sighed, still looking at the ice. Ryan stepped forward. "So how about you both learn today?" They both turned to him. "What do you mean?" Grace asked. "We'll rent some skates." Ryan smiled. "I'll teach you." "You know how to skate?" Chloe asked hopefully, her eyes lighting up. "I do. My mom taught me when I was a kid." He pointed to the rink. "I'm no professional, but I know the basics." Grace hesitated. She didn't want Ryan to keep spending money on them. "Ryan, you don't have to." "I want to," he interrupted gently. "Please, it'll be fun." Chloe tugged on her mom's coat sleeve, her eyes pleading. "Please, Mommy." Grace looked at her daughter, at that hopeful little face, then at Ryan. How could she say no? "Okay, let's try." "Yay!" Chloe jumped up and down, clapping. Ryan paid for the skates, picking out the right sizes. They sat on a bench to put them on. Grace struggled, and Ryan knelt in front of her. "Let me help." He tied the laces carefully, not too tight. "It's perfect." He did the same for Chloe, who was anxiously wiggling her feet. "Ready, champ." "Ready." When they stepped onto the rink, Grace felt her legs wobble. The ice was slippery, unstable. She clung to the side railing tightly. "Easy." Ryan was beside her, holding her arm. Slowly, no one learns on the first try. "I'm going to fall. If you fall, I'll catch you. I promise." Chloe was so excited she tried to take a big step and immediately slipped, falling on her bottom. Grace started to worry, but the girl just laughed out loud. "This is hard." "It is." Ryan skated over to her, extending his hand. "But you'll get the hang of it. Come on." He pulled Chloe up and held both of her hands firmly. "First, you need to find your balance. Bend your knees a little. Yes, very good. Now try to glide 1 foot at a time, very slowly." Chloe tried, wobbly, her legs shaking, but with Ryan holding her hands, she didn't fall. Little by little, she started to get the rhythm. "I'm doing it." "You are," Ryan smiled, skating backward as he guided the girl. "You're a natural skater." Grace watched them from the edge, still holding the railing, her heart tight with emotion. The sight of Ryan holding Chloe's hands, teaching her with infinite patience, laughing with her, was something Grace never imagined she would see. It was something she always thought her daughter wouldn't have, a father figure, someone to teach, to guide, to be present. "Mommy, look," Chloe shouted, gliding a few feet. "I'm skating." "I see you, honey. You're doing great." Ryan spent the next 20 minutes teaching Chloe. He had endless patience, holding her when she wobbled, encouraging her when she got frustrated, celebrating every bit of progress. "You're doing so well," he would say. "Better than I did my first time. I fell like 10 times in a row." "Really? Really? And one time I ripped my pants." Ryan made a funny face. "I went home all wet," Chloe laughed loudly, and the sound echoed across the rink. Eventually, Chloe gained enough confidence to try on her own. Ryan stayed close, ready to catch her, but she managed to glide a few feet without help. "I did it!" she yelled, her arms outstretched. "I did it by myself!" Grace clapped from the edge, tears of pride streaming down her face. "Great job, my love." After a while, Chloe started to get tired. Her cheeks were red from the cold and the effort. "Can I rest for a bit?" "Of course, you deserve it." Ryan guided her back to the edge. They took off their skates and walked to a nearby bench. The view was beautiful, the lake shimmering under the sun, the snow-covered trees, the people skating, the clear blue sky. Ryan bought hot chocolate for all 3 of them, and they sat, warming their hands on the steaming cups. "That was the best thing I've ever done," Chloe said, taking a sip. "Thanks for teaching me, Ryan." "It was my pleasure." He ruffled the girl's blonde hair. "You were a great student." Chloe smiled and then jumped off the bench. "Can I go see the ducks at the lake?" Grace looked where the girl was pointing. There were children feeding ducks near the shore, not too far away. "You can but stay where I can see you, okay?" "Okay." Chloe ran towards the ducks, and Grace and Ryan were left alone on the bench. For a moment, they just watched the little girl, who was now crouching near the water, watching the ducks with fascination. "Thank you for today," Grace said softly, "for doing this for her." She had never skated before. She never had someone to teach her these things. Ryan turned to look at her. "I didn't do it out of obligation, Grace. I wanted to. I want to be here. Even so, it means a lot. You have no idea how much." Ryan was quiet, fidgeting with his cup. When he spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. "You know, before I met you two, I was just existing." He looked at the lake. "I'd wake up, go to work, come home, sleep. That was it. There was no meaning, no joy. It was all empty." Grace waited in silence. "After my mom died, I felt completely lost," Ryan continued. "She was always the person who gave meaning to things. Who threw the parties, who called to ask how I was doing, who reminded me of what was important in life." He looked at Grace, his eyes shining. "And then I met you two, in that grocery store, on Christmas Eve. And suddenly, I had a reason to wake up in the morning. I had something to look forward to, someone to care for. Grace felt a lump in her throat. "Ryan, being with you brought back the joy," he said with deep sincerity. "It brought back the meaning of life, and I'm grateful for that. More grateful than I can express." Grace took his hand, lacing her fingers with his, squeezing tightly. "We're grateful too, for everything. For being here, for caring, for being you." They sat like that, hand in hand, watching Chloe, who was laughing as the ducks swam around her. "Mommy! Ryan!" Chloe ran back, her face lit up. "The ducks are so cute. One of them ate from my hand." She climbed onto the bench between them, and Ryan put his arm around her shoulders, pulling her closer. "This was the best day of my life," she declared, snuggling against Ryan. "I'm glad, champ." Ryan smiled, kissing the top of her head. Chloe looked at him, then at her mother, and suddenly grew serious. There was something thoughtful on her face. "Ryan," she said softly, almost shyly. "Yes." Chloe took a deep breath, as if gathering her courage. "We like you a lot." Grace felt her heart race. She knew that tone in her daughter's voice. She knew there was more coming. Ryan smiled, visibly moved. "I like you two a lot too. Very much." Chloe was quiet for a second, looking at her own hands. Then she lifted her bright eyes to Ryan and, with all the innocence of childhood, said, "I wish you could be my dad." The silence that followed was absolute. The entire world seemed to stop. Grace felt tears immediately fill her eyes. She looked at Ryan and saw he was just as emotional, his jaw tight, his eyes shining, a tear already rolling down his face. "Chloe," Grace began, her voice cracking, but Ryan gently raised his hand, asking her to wait. He turned completely to Chloe, taking her little hands in his. "Chloe, that's—" He paused, his voice choked. "That's the most special thing anyone has ever said to me in my life." "Is it?" the girl asked innocently. "It is." Ryan wiped away a tear, unashamed to cry in front of them. "And I would be honored, very, very honored." "So you can?" Chloe asked hopefully. "Can you be my dad?" Grace couldn't hold back her tears. They fell freely as she watched Ryan hug her daughter, holding her with all the care in the world. "I can," Ryan whispered against her blonde hair. "If your mom lets me. If you really want me to, I can, and I want to." Chloe wrapped her arms around his neck tightly. "I do. I really, really do." Grace covered her mouth, sobbing softly. Ryan reached an arm out for her, pulling her into the hug too, and she let herself go, let herself fall into that embrace, into that moment, into that promise of a family. The three of them stayed there, huddled together on that park bench, while the sun shone above them and the world kept spinning. People passed by, children played, life went on, but in that moment, time seemed to stand still. The night was cold and clear. Grace and Ryan sat on the small apartment couch with only the kitchen light on. Chloe had gone to bed an hour ago, exhausted after another day at school. The silence between them was comfortable, the kind that only exists between people who truly know each other. Ryan held a cup of coffee in his hands, but wasn't drinking. He just stared at the dark liquid as if looking for courage in it. "Are you okay?" Grace asked, noticing the tension in his shoulders. "For your quiet tonight?" "I'm fine." He looked at her and smiled, but it was a nervous smile. "Just thinking about what?" Ryan put the cup on the table and turned his body towards her. There was something different in his eyes, something intense, vulnerable, about us. Grace felt her heart speed up. "Us? Yeah?" Ryan ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she now recognized as a sign of nervousness. "Grace, I need to tell you something, and I don't know how to say it, so I'm just going to be direct." She waited, her hands suddenly sweating. "I'm in love with you." The words hung in the air between them like a confession that changed everything. Grace held her breath, her eyes wide. "Ryan—" "Wait, let me finish," he asked, his voice firm but emotional. "I know this might seem fast. It's only been a few months since we met, But Grace, every day I spend with you and Chloe, I'm more certain. He took her hands, holding them tightly. I wake up thinking about you. So I spend the day waiting for the moment I get to come here, to see you, to hear her laugh. When I'm not with you, it feels like something is missing. Ryan looked deep into her eyes. You two have become my life, and I don't want to live without you anymore. Grace felt tears fill her eyes. She couldn't speak, she just listened. I want to build a life with you, Ryan continued, his voice softer now, more intimate. I want to wake up every day by your side. I want to be there when Chloe needs me, when she grows up, when she has doubts or fears. I want to be part of this family. I want to be the man you deserve, the father she deserves. A tear streamed down Grace's face. I know you've been through a lot. I know Chloe's father hurt you, abandoned you, and I understand if you're afraid to trust again. Ryan squeezed her hands. But I promise you, Grace, I promise I'm not him. I promise I won't leave. I promise I'll be here every day forever. Grace closed her eyes, letting the tears fall freely. She felt her heart beating so hard it felt like it would burst from her chest. I love you, Ryan said, and there was so much truth in those 3 words that it hurt. And I love Chloe, and I want to spend the rest of my life proving it to you. Grace opened her eyes and looked at him. At this man who had appeared out of nowhere on Christmas Eve, who had cared when no one else did, who had chosen to stay when everyone else had left. Ryan? Her voice came out shaky. Me too. You too what? I love you too, Grace said, and it was as if a huge weight had been lifted from her shoulders. I'm in love with you. And it scares me so much. Ryan held her face gently. Why does it scare you? Because... Grace took a deep breath. Because I'm so afraid of getting hurt again, of opening up, of trusting, and then you realize this isn't what you want, that we aren't what you want. Grace, look at me. She looked. You and Chloe are exactly what I want, Ryan said with conviction. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Grace couldn't hold back anymore. She threw herself into his arms, hugging him tightly, as if to make sure this was real. Ryan hugged her back, holding her against his chest, kissing the top of her head. I'm so scared, Grace cried against his chest. I know, Ryan murmured, but we'll face this fear together. You're not alone anymore, Grace. Never again. They stayed like that for long minutes, just holding each other, letting the emotions flow. When they finally separated, Grace looked at Ryan and smiled through her tears. I never thought I would feel this again, that I would trust someone again. And do you? Ryan asked softly. Do you trust me? Grace thought for a moment, looking into those eyes that had only shown kindness and sincerity since the day they met. Yes, she said. I trust you. Ryan smiled, and it was the most beautiful smile Grace had ever seen. He leaned in and kissed her, soft and gentle, as if sealing a promise. When they pulled apart, Grace rested her forehead against his. What do we do now? Now, Ryan smiled. Now we build this together, one day at a time. They talked late into the night, making plans, dreaming together. When Ryan finally left, it was past midnight. Grace went to bed with a light heart, feeling that life was finally heading in the right direction. The next morning was Sunday. Ryan showed up early, bringing donuts and fresh coffee. It had become a tradition. Every weekend he would come over for breakfast with them. When Grace opened the door, Ryan pulled her in for a kiss before he even stepped inside. Good morning, he murmured against her lips. Good morning, Grace smiled, feeling her face flush. Mummy! Chloe came running, still in her pajamas. Ryan's here. Good morning, champ. Ryan bent down to hug her. I brought donuts. Yay! They sat at the table for breakfast. Chloe ate her donut while talking about a cartoon she had seen on TV. Ryan and Grace exchanged glances, secret smiles, discreet touches under the table. Chloe stopped talking mid-story and looked at them curiously. Are you guys dating? Grace almost choked on her coffee. Ryan laughed. Why do you think that? He asked. Because you keep looking at each other differently. Chloe shrugged, as if it were obvious. And Mommy is smiling a lot. Grace and Ryan looked at each other. Yeah, Ryan said, taking Grace's hand on the table. We're dating." "I knew it." Chloe clapped her hands. "Is that good?" "It's very good," Grace answered, squeezing Ryan's hand. "So are you going to get married?" "Chloe," Grace turned red. "What?" the girl asked innocently. "People who date get married. That's how it works." Ryan laughed out loud. "Your daughter doesn't waste any time, does she?" "I'm sorry," Grace murmured, embarrassed. "Don't be sorry." Ryan turned to Chloe. "And yes, one day we'll get married, if your mom says yes." Grace looked at him, surprised and moved. "Ryan, I'm serious." He smiled. "Not right now. It doesn't have to be tomorrow. But one day, when you're ready." Chloe jumped out of her chair, excited. "So we're going to be a real family." "We already are," Ryan said. "But it'll be official," Chloe insisted. Grace watched her daughter, her heart tight with emotion. Chloe was so happy, so excited. For the first time, she had something she always wanted, a complete family. After breakfast, they went to the living room. Chloe wanted to show Ryan the new drawing she had made at school. She grabbed her folder and started pulling out the pages, explaining each one with enthusiasm. "This one is our house." She pointed to a drawing with 3 figures in front of a house. "This is Mommy, this is me, and this is you." Ryan took the drawing, looking at it carefully. The 3 figures were holding hands, all smiling. "It's beautiful, Chloe. And look at this one." She showed another drawing, this time with 4 figures. "This is us too, but there's a dog here." "Do you want a dog?" Ryan asked. "I do." Chloe jumped excitedly. "But Mommy said we can't have one in the apartment." "That's right," Grace confirmed. "The lease doesn't allow it." Chloe went back to looking at her drawings, and then fell quiet for a moment. Grace knew that look. Her daughter was thinking about something important. "Ryan," Chloe said, her voice low. "Yes." The little girl fidgeted with her fingers, nervous. She looked at her mother, then back at Ryan. "Can I call you Dad?" The silence that followed was absolute. Grace felt tears well up in her eyes immediately, her hand flying to cover her mouth. Ryan froze for a second, processing the words. Then his eyes filled with tears, and he knelt down to Chloe's level. "Of course you can, Chloe," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "I would be honored." "Really?" the girl asked, her bright eyes shining. Ryan held her hand gently, tears streaming freely down his face. "Really? Very, very honored." Chloe smiled widely and threw herself into his arms. "So you're my daddy now." Ryan hugged the girl tightly, closing his eyes, holding this child who was not his by blood, but who was already completely his in his heart. "I am," he whispered. "Your daddy forever." Grace watched the scene, crying openly now. She brought a hand to her chest, feeling her heart so full it felt like it would overflow. This was everything she had ever wanted for her daughter, someone who would truly love her, who would choose to stay, who wanted to be a father not out of obligation, but out of love. Ryan opened his eyes and looked at Grace over Chloe's shoulder. Their eyes met, and in that moment, without needing words, they understood that their lives had changed forever. "Dad?" Chloe tested the word, pulling back a little to look at Ryan. "Can I call you that now?" "You can." Ryan wiped the tears from his face. "Whenever you want." "Dad, Dad, Dad," Chloe laughed, testing the word several times. "I like it," Ryan laughed too, pulling her into another hug. "I like hearing it too." Chloe broke free and ran to Grace. "Mommy, I have a real dad now." Grace knelt and hugged her daughter, the tears still falling. "You do, my love, you do. And we're a family?" "We are." Grace looked at Ryan, who had come closer. "A real family." Ryan came near and wrapped them both in a hug. The 3 of them stood there, in the middle of that small living room, hugging, crying, and laughing at the same time. "I love you," Ryan said. "Both of you. More than anything." "We love you too," Grace replied. So much, Daddy," Chloe added, and the word came out naturally, as if it had always been that way. Ryan kissed the top of both of their heads. "Thank you," he murmured, "for letting me be a part of this, for accepting me, for loving me." "We're the ones who should be thanking you," Grace said, looking at him, "for showing up at that grocery store, for staying, for choosing us." In that moment, Grace realized their lives had truly changed. It was no longer her alone against the world, carrying all the weight on her shoulders. Now she had someone by her side, someone who chose to be there, someone who loved her daughter as if she were his own from day one. And Chloe. Chloe finally had what she always wanted, a real dad, someone to teach, to play with, to be present, someone who loved her unconditionally. "Dad?" Chloe called again, still getting used to the word. "Yes, honey," Ryan replied, and the word came out easily, naturally. "Are you going to stay forever?" Ryan looked at Grace, then at Chloe, and smiled. "I am forever, I promise." And he kept that promise, because some people come into your life and just stay. Not because they have to, but because they choose to. And choosing to stay, choosing to love, choosing to be a family, that's what really matters. Grace hugged Ryan and Chloe tighter, closing her eyes and engraving that moment in her memory forever. The moment everything changed, the moment they stopped being just two and became three. A complete family. A real family. And for the first time since Chloe was born, Grace allowed herself to completely relax. She allowed herself to believe she no longer had to fight alone, that finally, after so long, she could share her life with someone who truly cared, with someone who had chosen to love not only her but her daughter too, and that was all she had ever wanted. Everything she had ever dreamed of, and now, finally, it was real. Grace realized her life had completely changed, that they were no longer alone, that finally, after so long fighting, carrying everything on her shoulders, striving to be both a mother and a father, she had someone by her side, someone who chose to stay, someone who chose to love, someone who chose to be a father when he had no obligation at all. And when they finally broke apart from the hug, all three with tear-streaked faces and wide smiles, Grace knew with absolute certainty that this was just the beginning of something bigger, deeper, truer, the beginning of a real family. The boxes were stacked in the small living room of the apartment. Grace looked around at the space that had been her home for so many years. Every corner held memories, good and bad. Here she had raised Chloe alone, had cried, had fought, had learned to be strong, and now she was leaving it all behind. "Mommy, does this box go too?" Chloe appeared, holding a box of toys. "It does, sweetie. Everything goes." Ryan came into the apartment carrying another empty box. "Almost everything is packed, just the bedroom stuff left." Grace nodded, but didn't move. Ryan noticed and came closer. "Are you okay?" "I am." Grace looked at him. "It's just strange. This place was my home for so long." Ryan took her hand. "And now you'll have a real house." "A home. Not just a place where you sleep, but where you live." Grace smiled, squeezing his hand. "I know. I just need a minute." "Take all the time you need." 2 hours later, the moving truck was loaded. It wasn't much. Clothes, some small furniture, Chloe's toys, kitchen utensils. Everything fit easily. Grace locked the apartment door for the last time and handed the keys to the landlord. Chloe was already in Ryan's car, too excited to feel any nostalgia. "Ready?" Ryan asked. "Ready?" The house, no, the mansion, seemed even bigger when Grace arrived, knowing it was now her home. Ryan parked in the garage and helped them out. "Welcome home," he said, smiling. Chloe ran inside, her footsteps echoing through the empty foyer. "It's so big," she yelled, her voice reverberating off the walls. Grace entered slowly, carrying a box. Everything was clean, organized, but there was a coldness to the space. It lacked life. It lacked warmth. "Let me show you your rooms." Ryan took the box from her hands. "I set everything up like you asked." They went up the stairs. The second-floor hallway was long, with several doors. Ryan opened the first one on the left. "This is our room." Grace walked in and held her breath. The room was huge, with a king-size bed, a closet bigger than her entire old bedroom, and large windows overlooking the garden. There were fresh flowers on the nightstand. White roses, her favorite. "Ryan, it's beautiful. I wanted you to feel at home." He placed the box on the floor. "And Chloe's room is right next door." Chloe's room was a dream. Walls painted a light pink. A canopy bed, shelves full of books, and plenty of space for all her toys. There was even a small desk near the window. "Daddy," Chloe ran in. "Is this room mine?" "It is. It's giant." She jumped on the bed. "I love it." Grace watched her daughter, her eyes misty. She had never been able to give her these things. A big room, a good bed, space to play. "Hey," Ryan touched her shoulder. "Are you crying?" "It's happiness." Grace wiped away the tears. Just happiness. The first few days were an adjustment. Grace still woke up in the middle of the night, thinking she was in the cramped apartment. Chloe explored every corner of the house with fascination. And Ryan finally saw those walls come to life. The most noticeable change happened in the kitchen. Grace naturally took charge. On the second day, she made breakfast, pancakes and scrambled eggs, bacon, fresh fruit. The smell spread throughout the entire house. Ryan came downstairs, following the aroma, and found Grace in the kitchen, humming softly as she flipped pancakes. "Good morning." "Good morning," Grace smiled. "Sit down, it's almost ready." "You didn't have to. I wanted to." She placed a plate in front of him. "This kitchen is too big to stay empty." Chloe appeared, still in her pajamas, her blonde hair messy. "It smells so good." They sat at the table together, and for the first time in years, that house had a real breakfast. Not a lonely coffee chugged down before work, but a family meal with conversation, laughter, and plans for the day. "Daddy, are you going to work today?" Chloe asked. "I am, but I'll be back early." Ryan looked at Grace. "I thought we could have dinner together, the three of us." "I'll make lasagna," Grace decided. "I love lasagna." Chloe clapped her hands. And so it went. Every day Grace cooked. The kitchen that was once purely decorative was now always in use. Pots on the stove, delicious smells, experiments with new recipes. The whole house smelled of home-cooked food, of home, of family. The changes didn't stop there. Chloe left toys scattered in the living room. Grace put up pictures of them on the shelves. Ryan started leaving books and papers on the coffee table. The perfect organized house gradually became messy and alive. "Look at this," Ryan showed Grace one afternoon. "There's a doll in my office." "I'm sorry. I'll talk to her so—" "No," Ryan interrupted, smiling. "I love it. I love seeing her toys everywhere. I love tripping over her shoes at the door. I love all of it." Grace understood. That house had been a silent mausoleum. Now it was a home full of life. One afternoon, Grace was in the kitchen preparing dinner when she heard running footsteps. Chloe appeared down the hall, her arms spread out like an airplane, laughing loudly. "Be careful not to slip," Grace called out. "I'm going to see Daddy in his office," Chloe yelled back, disappearing down the hall. Grace smiled, turning back to the stove. Seconds later, she heard Ryan's voice from down the hall. "Whoa, who is this pilot?" "It's me," Chloe laughed. "Want to help me with some important papers?" "Yes," Grace leaned against the counter, listening to the voices coming from the office. Laughter, conversations, Ryan's deep voice mixed with Chloe's high-pitched one. That was the sound of a family. Later, during dinner, Chloe was especially excited. "Today at school, the teacher asked what we did over the weekend," she said, eating her mashed potatoes. "And I said I went to the park with my dad and my mom." Grace and Ryan exchanged glances. "And what did the teacher say?" Ryan asked. "She said that was nice." Chloe shrugged. "And Sarah asked if you were my real dad, and I said yes." "And did she believe you?" Grace asked softly. "Of course, because you are my real dad." Chloe looked at Ryan with that pure innocence. "You don't have to be blood to be real, right?" Ryan had to blink several times to hold back tears. "No, you don't, sweetie, you don't." After dinner, Ryan and Grace sat on the porch while Chloe watched cartoons in the living room. The air was cool, and the stars were shining in the sky. "You know what I realized," Ryan said, holding Grace's hand. "What?" "This house was huge, but I felt suffocated here. He looked at the lit windows. Now, with you two, it feels like there's extra space. Not because the house got bigger, but because I can breathe again. Grace rested her head on his shoulder. Me too. For the first time in years, I wake up without that weight in my chest. Without worrying if I'll be able to pay the bills, if Chloe is happy, if I'm being enough of a mother and father. She sighed. I can finally just live. Ryan kissed the top of her head. And you're a really good cook. Grace laughed. It's the only thing I know how to do right. That's not true, but seriously, Grace. Ryan turned to look at her. Have you ever thought about doing this professionally? Doing what? Cooking. Opening a restaurant, maybe. Grace let out a humorless laugh. Ryan, I barely finished high school. I don't know anything about management, accounting, any of that. But you know how to cook, and I know about business. Ryan held her hands. We could do this together. I handle the business side, you handle the kitchen. It's not that simple. Why not? Ryan insisted. Look, I have connections. I have capital. You have the talent. Why not try? Grace was quiet, processing. A restaurant. It had always been a distant dream, something that belonged in the realm of fantasy. But now, with Ryan by her side, offering not just support but a real partnership, maybe it wasn't so impossible. I'll think about it, she said. Do, but think seriously. In the following months, the idea started to take shape. Ryan introduced Grace to a business consultant. They visited commercial spaces. Grace created a menu, tested recipes, perfected dishes. Chloe loved to help, stirring batter and tasting everything. The house kitchen became an experimental lab. Mommy, this is the best pie in the world, Chloe declared after tasting an apple pie. You think so? I'm sure of it. 6 months later, the restaurant opened. It was small, cozy, with only 15 tables. The walls were decorated with family photos of Grace's grandmother, her mother, and now herself in the kitchen. The name, Grace's Kitchen. The first night was a success. All tables were full, compliments on the dishes, customers asking to meet the chef. Grace could hardly believe it. You did it, Ryan said, hugging her in the kitchen at the end of the night. You really did it. We did it, Grace corrected. I never would have done this alone. The restaurant grew quickly. Critics came and loved it. Reservations started being made weeks in advance. Grace hired a small but efficient team. And even with success, she never lost the essence. Homemade food made with love, served with care. But professional success was nothing compared to what she had at home. Every day, she returned to that mansion that was no longer cold or empty. She returned to Chloe running to meet her, to Ryan greeting her with a kiss, to family dinners and quiet evenings in the living room. A year after the move, on a Sunday night, the three of them were having dinner at the large dining room table. Grace had prepared a special roast with all the sides. The table was full, fragrant, inviting. This roast is perfect, Mommy, Chloe said. Thank you, honey. But the food isn't the best part, Chloe continued, looking around the table. It's us being here together. Grace and Ryan stopped eating, paying attention. Chloe smiled, that pure and honest child's smile. It's so good to have a dad. The words were simple, but they carried enormous weight. Grace felt tears fill her eyes. Ryan reached his hand across the table, holding Chloe's. And it's so good to be your dad. Grace looked at the two of them, at her blonde, bright-eyed daughter, at the man who had chosen to love them with no obligation. She looked at the scene around the table, that perfect family moment, and she realized that yes, finally, they had found their place in the world. It was no longer her fighting against everything alone. It was no longer her carrying the weight by herself. Now she had a true partnership. She had someone to share the victories and the defeats with. She had someone who loved her daughter as much as she did. She had a family. Ryan raised his wine glass. A toast. Grace and Chloe raised their glasses. Chloe with juice, Grace with wine. To us, Ryan said, to our family, to our life together. To family, Grace and Chloe repeated together. The glasses clinked, the sound echoing through the dining room, that had once known only silence. That night, after Chloe went to sleep, Grace and Ryan sat in the living room talking. "Are you happy?" Ryan asked. Grace thought for a moment, truly considering the question. She thought about everything she had been through, all the hardships, all the moments she thought she wouldn't make it. And she thought about where she was now, with a real home, a career she loved, and a complete family. "I am," she said, and there was so much truth in those two words. "For the first time in my life, I am completely happy." Ryan pulled her into a hug. "Me too." And it was true. Ryan had found purpose again. He had found love, family, a reason to live. The loneliness that consumed him had been replaced by laughter, conversations, simple but meaningful moments. They had saved each other. Grace gave Ryan a family, a purpose, unconditional love. Ryan gave Grace and Chloe security, support, and the chance to dream big. And together they built something beautiful. A new family had been born. Not a perfect family, because perfect families don't exist, but a real family built on love, choice, and commitment. A family that started in a crowded grocery store on Christmas Eve with a desperate mother, a hopeful